Right, it is what it is. It is 29 years after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis, but the country has experienced a lot of transformation. And the question we ask ourselves tonight, what makes Rwanda work? And we'd love to hear from you from whatever part of the world you're watching us. And of course, a lot of remarkable progress has been taking place from the economic space to inclusivity, and all that is what we want to discuss right here on the program. My name, as always, is Eugene Andangwe. Allow me to introduce our panelists who will be joining us for this very, very important conversation, and they'll be sitting from this side to that particular end. And first up is Paul Rukesha, who's the Director General Communications and Partnership Cooperation at the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement, otherwise known as Minugumwe. He's joining us to participate in this very important conversation. Also coming in on this particular very important conversation is none other than Dr. Ozonia Ojielo. He is the UN Resident Coordinator, and he also represents the UN Secretary General right here in Rwanda. He's joining us for this very, very important conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me also to bring in a young voice to the conversation, representing the young people, and that is the generation of the youth, and she's none other than Sharon Baingana. Sharon is the Secretary General of our past initiative. Just the other day, they had a very amazing event that brought together a number of young people just to try to remind us on the importance of keeping the memory. Also joining us on this show is Ambassador Ron Adam, a friend of Rwanda. He is Israel's ambassador to Rwanda. He's setting in his feet right here on this show for the very first time, and they're joining us, all of them, to have a very important conversation on renewed Rwanda, talking about Rwanda's journey of transformation 29 years since or after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis. Listen, this is your show, and you are also allowed to participate from wherever part of the world that you are. And we've been posting from various quarters, and we've been receiving feedback from various people who've been checking our Twitter feed. And remember always to add the hashtag #TheSummitRW. And we had spoken about the last 29 years, Rwanda undergoing a remarkable transformation from the aftermath of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi that devastated the nation. And of course, the country today is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Big question, what is making Rwanda work? And we'll also be asking you to talk to us a bit about why you are proud to be Rwandan. Talk to us. We'd love to hear more from you, and we welcome you to participate in this particular conversation. Allow me to go back to our panelists and set this conversation rolling. And I want to start with you, Paul, and thank you so much for making time. Most of you right here actually on very short notice. We were talking about this before going on air. You know, for you it was actually a day today. You actually joined today. Ambassador Ron was yesterday. You too, you know, and it speaks to the appetite of having an inclusive conversation, just to be able to hear diverse voices. And so I want to start with you, Paul Rukesha. Paul, you sit in a very significant ministry, a very important one. And maybe we have people who might not understand what is actually the role of the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement. But over and above that, Paul, 29 years for others might just seem as a number. Yeah. But for you, as a genocide against the Tutsi survivor, what does this number 29 years mean to you? Yeah. Let's start from there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this invitation, Eugene. So, yeah, as you said, it was on short notice. And when you called me, I was in the middle of preparing the closure of this commemorative week. But I couldn't miss this important subject. So for me, as a survivor, it means a lot. Because when the genocide happened, I was 16 years old. And when it was stopped by the RPF, yeah, I was 16 years old. And that means a lot. It means that I grew up in a country like peaceful, that doesn't have humiliation that we have been experiencing over the years even as a student, in a primary school,
Yeah.
in secondary school,
Yeah.
because the genocide started when I was in the second year of secondary school. So the humiliation of making us standing up and being divided into Hutus, Tutsis. So it was no more after the genocide. And as our Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement mentioned on the 7th of April,
Yeah.
he said something very powerful. He said, it's been 29 years when there's no youth being killed or killing. There was no youth and other people being hunted,
Yeah.
and others hunting. So and he said it's for the first time that we have like almost 3 decades
Yeah.
that we haven't have these killings based on ethnics, based on anything that divides Rwandans since the independence, since the 1962. We have had like a genocide that wasn't recognized by the international community, but that some people, some powerful people like Bertrand Russell from Jean-Paul Sartre, people who recognized the killings of 60s and 60s as genocide. Even some international radios like Radio Vatican, they said what was going in 63, 64, it was a genocide against the Tutsi again. And in 70s we have had the killings and forced exile, forced relocation of people from the south, from the east to Bugesera, where the living conditions were very harsh and brutal, and where people died, actually, with the beasts. So it was the first time, almost 3 decades, that we have peace. Now we are enjoying. Adult people, young people. Now people are struggling with their lives, economic transformation, anything but conflict based on ethnics.
Very powerful. I'll come back to you just to talk to us a bit more in terms of the civic engagement that is needed to ensure that no generation ever forgets and keeps on building up on the value that those who stopped the genocide against the Tutsis really wanted to ensure that the country is what it is today. Let's talk a bit about Dr. Ozonia. You represent an organization, the UN, representing the UN Secretary General right here in Rwanda. 29 years since the 1994 genocide. Every year, it might not be you as a person, but as an organization, as a UN. What comes to mind, especially when it comes to the aspect that Rwandans, the Tutsis who felt that they needed the support that they needed from the international community, the UN particularly, abandoned them. 29 years later, what sort of feeling comes to this organization that is the UN?
Thank you very much, Ernest, for the invitation to your program, and I say hello to the viewers from around the world. 1994 was a stain on the conscience of the international community, a shame for the world community, and the UN Secretary General actually highlighted that in his statement on Friday on the International Day of Reflection on the Genocide. There are many considerations that are inexcusable about what happened in 1994. And unfortunately, we saw that reflected in the former Yugoslavia, where communities surrounded and the UN peacekeeping mission still unable to provide the kind of response that was needed. But on the backs of the tragedy that happened then, the international community came up with 2 complementary notions. The first notion is the idea of never again. That we should not allow this to happen. So if you find that in the context of the African Union, it moved from the idea of non-interference in the internal affairs of member states to the idea of non-indifference. So the AU itself began to be actively engaged in what is happening within member states, particularly when groups and communities are being targeted, rights are being violated, sometimes not on a mass scale, but the whole idea that they're beginning to violate rights and everybody keeps quiet could create a permissive environment for it to escalate. And then during the time of Kofi Annan as UN Secretary General, he came up with a policy of the responsibility to protect. That under the United Nations Charter, that the international community has a responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. And so events that happen within nations' borders, where groups are threatened and sometimes can create a regional conflagration, are a threat to international peace and security. And therefore the international community cannot keep quiet. So what are we doing since then? So you find that today in particular, April 12th, was our own United Nations system in Rwanda commemoration of the 68 UN staff that were murdered during the genocide, but also in the context of all the victims of the genocide. So by organizing these commemorative events, it is a reminder, not just to the UN, but to the international community, that you cannot put the blinkers on. We cannot offer any excuses. It is not enough to say that the UN system doesn't have its own army, and that the military components, the security components of UN peacekeeping missions are contributed by member states. And so those member states must have a strong sense of the international obligation under the normative role of a responsibility to protect, or of the AU agreement or non-indifference in the internal affairs of member states. So you have a duty to engage. And you remember, in the context of the genocide in Rwanda as well, that the UN then came up with the notion of the indivisibility for punishment for international crimes. So it doesn't matter the geographic jurisdiction. Wherever you are, in any part of the world, you could be punished for international crimes that happen within the confines of a member state. So I think we've learned our lessons, and our hope is that we are organized as an international community to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right. We'll come back to that. I mean, there are those, I'm sure, who might agree or don't agree on the aspect of learning lessons, particularly on the aspect of never again, looking at what has been happening within our regional spheres. I want to pass the baton to Sharon. Sharon is a young person listening to this conversation, and felicitate you actually for your team, for the event you organized just the other day. What is it that you wanted to achieve as young people, and what does the number 29 years mean to you as a young person, looking back after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis?
So from your first question about what we wanted to achieve, it's been 13 years running. The same thing, we still have the same objective, which is to teach young people like myself, people who were not there during the genocide, people who do not necessarily understand the gravity of what happened, to learn and understand what the genocide is, what it means to lose more than 1 million people in just 100 days. The meticulous organization of the genocide and how much it has cost us. The number 29, to me, it signifies what it represents, what a long way we have come so far. The fact that I am sitting here in a peaceful country, in a country that allows everybody, regardless of background, regardless of ethnicity or anything that was used to divide us, that we are presented with equal opportunities to go to school, to be able to work the jobs we want, to open our own businesses. And it also signifies the kind of work we still have to do as young people and the kind of contribution we have to make in order to keep what has been achieved alive.
We'll come back on that, especially on the aspect of young people and whether you feel the pressure and whether even there's understanding of what lays as far as expectations are for young people. Let me speak to Ambassador Ron. You've been in the country, if I'm not wrong, 4 years now. Number 29 years later, every year there's the commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsis. For you, you are a second-generation survivor of the Holocaust. And we spoke earlier on when we were starting on what this actually even means or feels for those who survived the genocide against the Tutsis here. What sort of reflections do you have on this?
Yes, thank you, Eugene. I have daily reflections on that. I came here as an ambassador of Israel. First ambassador, we opened an embassy just when I came, and I represent Israel, of course, but being a second generation of Holocaust survivors made my post here so intense. I came here to share our knowledge in agriculture, in water and management, and in innovation and all this. And of course we do it as far as we can. But my status as the second generation of Holocaust survivors, and I spoke about it in their event, in our past event, you know, my parents did not share their stories. My mother was in a concentration camp. She was 9 years old when she was taken from her home to Bergen-Belsen in Germany. She carried this as trauma all her life. And my father was also, he was 15, but he had 4 years of Holocaust experience. He was running away from Nazi soldiers and dogs for 4 years with his father and sister after his mother after his mother died in the bombings of the German Luftwaffe. So I am traumatized for sure, and I am carrying it in my DNA. And what we are trying to do here is working with local organizations to promote awareness to second generation transmission of trauma, to mental health generally, to the need. There is no place for stigma. If you need, and you do, you are second generation or survivor themselves, of course. And so I try to promote culture of reading and writing in the context of the genocide, learning from our story. My parents didn't share the stories. I almost don't know anything. My father wrote a letter to Yad Vashem, our history, our Holocaust museum, before he died, for some reason, the year before he died. And I found these letters, and he died 20 years ago. I just found it when I came here, when I packed my house. I just found it. First time I learned his story was from this letter, was really recently.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's a daily experience for me to talk to survivors. Some survivors do not talk. I cannot do much about it.
Yeah.
Some survivors like to talk and share in details. I cannot preach. I can just say that I think it's important to talk, to speak, to share. Yeah. And that is my but of course we go on to talk about the prosperous situation of this country, which of course...
Yeah, we're going to come to that.
Yes.
And you bring in a very important aspect of the significance of sharing those stories, the history, to generations, so that this, you know, our past is never forgotten. And this brings me back to Paul. What is the strategy for the ministry in ensuring that this happens? Because, and what are the trends? What are you seeing when it comes to even the survivors wanting to share this knowledge or this information that is very heavy even to actually start talking about, versus those who are recipient or perceived recipient of this information, the generation of today that wasn't there in 1994 during the atrocities? What trends are you seeing? Are young people ready to hear? Are survivors you know, open enough to talk? What's the strategy to ensure that this communication, this information stays or lives on with us?
Yeah, one of the strategies that the ministry has adopted is to collect testimonies. Already before, when the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement becomes, has that name, there were 4 governmental agencies that were combined into the ministry, the current ministry, including CNLG, which was the National Commission to Fight Against Genocide, There was a FARC, the survivors fund to, to assist vulnerable survivors.
Yeah.
There was a National Itorero Commission.
Yeah.
There was also
ARG.
Yeah.
No?
there was
ARG,
there was FARC, there was CNLG, there was NIC,
Yeah.
National Itorero Commission. There was, what is the fourth?
No, Ibuka?
No.
Yeah.
Government organized. Okay, I will remember it. So CNLG already was working with the local NGOs, including Aegis Trust, to collect testimonies, a lot of testimonies in different formats, in audio-visual formats, and all those materials are harbored in a modern way with sophisticated devices. So you can access through websites. We have websites. And now also we have Gacaca records of court proceedings. So now we are digitizing 48 million documents, pages, not documents, pages of court proceedings. So those are resources that can teach the youth what happened.
Yeah.
So including those stories or those life histories, actually. It's not only stories because there's a difference. Life histories means someone like a survivor is telling from the pre-genocide, what happens, what was life before the genocide, what kind of persecution they have experienced, what were the dreams, the child dreams they had, what were the neighborhood, the interrelations with the neighbors, and then we go to genocide. What happened in the genocide? Who were the killers? Who were the perpetrators of the genocide? Who were the rescuers, aid givers? Who were the liberators? Many people mention the RPF. When the first I was to know that the genocide ended, I met RPF soldiers, and then they say, "Humura, don't be afraid again." And then we go to post-genocide. In post-genocide, we have themes like justice, Gacaca court. Many survivors who didn't want to attend Gacaca, but because the government just comforted them that there's no harm, it's a truthful moment to know what actually happened. Even if the justice, the sentences, so many would like to see the perpetrators all executed, but government, because the government was the government of unity, so the government was not going to, to commit another mass crime.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
So there was this balance, and then there is a message to youth. What every survivors or every interviewee would like to transmit something, whether it's a survivor or a rescuer. Rescuer is people we call abarinzi b'igihango in Rwanda. Those who risk their lives to save Tutsi who were being persecuted. And other experienced groups like elders, people who know the history. Those people also have something to teach, to transmit to younger generation. Like what was like in the 50s, how the hatred, how the genocide ideology developed over the years. Those people give their accounts, and then we learn from them. And also perpetrators, because there was doubt that their stories could not maybe be taken like seriously. or they keep editing their stories. But there are some people, there are still few, but there are some perpetrators, former perpetrators, who want to share their stories, their stories are genuine.
Yeah.
They say, you know, this is how we found ourselves in crime.
Yeah. So the goal was or is to ensure that there is enough data for generations for today and generations to come to be able to find this information and be able to learn about all this. Behind this, story or history, there has been a lot of transformation that has happened in this country. I mean, when I came to Rwanda in 2008, when my folks back at home were asking, where are you going? I told them I'm going to Rwanda. At that time, the only thing that they knew Rwanda for was the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis. In fact, back home when we were being or about to be caned, some parents or some adults would tell you Ntaku Rwanda to signify the level of BT or violence they're going to met on you. But I look back, the many years I've been here, there's a lot that I've seen in terms of transformation. And I want to ask you, Dr. Ozonie, you've been here less than a year. I think
9 months.
you could be the youngest in terms of those who have been in Rwanda on this panel. Look at the transformation. Talk to me about it and what you've seen firsthand. If someone was to tell you this is the Rwanda that some perpetrators thought that it will remain in the ashes, I mean, what do you see? And what do you think is behind why Rwanda works?
Thank you, Ernest. I may have been here for only 9 months, but I've been following the Rwandan events from different other positions I've held in the United Nations system. I think there are many things that need to be understood. You know, there's three buzzwords in international development discourse today that seems like they are new inventions. But I would actually argue that Rwanda was practicing in the immediate aftermath of the genocide. We call them the peace, security, and peace, humanitarian, and development nexus. Which means that in the context of war or violence, as you engage in humanitarian interventions, you must do them with an eye on development, but also towards long-term peace and stability. Well, the evidence that is clear. I've interviewed many of my colleagues who were in the process of the reconstruction process, the relocation, the resettlement of Rwandans as they came back from different parts of Africa. That, take an example like building of schools, that the government said, we don't want any tents. You know, in the context of a refugee situation, you start with tents, you start with temporary structures.
And under trees.
And then after a couple of years, maybe you can build a permanent structure. From day one, government said, we don't want tents, we don't want temporary structures. Start with permanent structures. If it's one building, put it up. And from there, they begin to expand. So some of the institutions and facilities you see across Rwanda today were started in that time, but as permanent structures. So it became easy to consolidate and to build. So this was something that in 1994, 1995, did not exist in international discourse. That's number one. Number two is transformation happens for a number of reasons. The first is you need to show a clear understanding of the drivers of change and stability in your society. What are the mega trends that are happening around you? When you understand them, the second is you get to do some focusing on prioritization. What is most important we must do now. And third is an understanding of alignment. Alignment is a common storyline, a whole of government and a whole of society approach. So if you look at what has happened across the last 29 years, all of these elements were present. So when I travel to parts of the country and I speak to mayors, they tell me a very comprehensive narrative of the development trends, of the challenges in the district. They don't need to have any notes, they fully understand the issues. The same way as I would get from my colleagues at Minubungwe or the other ministries. Then you add a second component of issues. You know, this component of issues has to deal with a sense of, a clear sense of self-esteem. We know where we are going. The rest of the world might not believe us.
But we know what we want.
We know what we're doing.
And where we're going.
And look at the many investments and development paths that Rwanda has taken. These were investment paths that people in the past said, no, you can't do it. You're a poor country. You're a least developed country. You don't have the resources. 29 years on, we've seen Rwanda is the mice industry is a big deal, and innovation, technology transformation are big elements. Second is a quest for learning and knowledge. To understand the new trends and new drivers so you can transform your society. And you know why this is important? Because across Rwanda, in the ministries, you have non-Rwandese, you have non-Africans in the office of the president, in different ministries as advisors. So you are harvesting the best possible expertise wherever you can find it and deploying them to serve Rwanda. And then you develop then the clear plans and then the leadership. Because when you add all of this and then you have leadership, why shouldn't Rwanda then be the envy of everybody else?
Right, and I want to hear from Sharon. I see you nodding. I think that is a nod of approval. But there's been a notion that probably the young generation might not be understanding all this. They might be taking all this for granted. You know, do they really know where this country has come from and the beautiful things that you enjoy today, or as young people enjoy today? Probably there is that notion of a lack of taking it seriously and wanting to, you know, shadow those who are in positions of influence, to be able to tap into their large, you know, capacity or information that you can pick from them. Tell me, as a young person yourself, looking at this great strides that the country has been making, are they top priority for young people? Does it really ring a bell for a young person or young people in Rwanda, from the trends and the people you've been meeting, have other concerns and priorities?
As much as it is a blessing for us to have been born after the genocide under great exemplary leadership and not really lacking of anything, I suppose it came with some sort of
sacrifice.
Absolutely sacrifice, but for us, I guess it's not something we had to think about. This is just the life we were born in, and it was very easy to get used to it. So again, like Ambassador talked about it, that it's very important to read and to write. It's equally important for young people to learn. And I guess the bigger problem is that maybe many of us don't want to do the boring stuff and learn and spend 14 days of mourning without the things we love and the things we are used to, because we do not really understand the context of the genocide and the gravity of it and what it is that our elders have lost in this country. So you said something after I spoke the first time about how it feels like pressure. I would say it is responsibility. It's a responsibility that we have to take, because this country, where it's going and where whatever it is that we want to achieve in the future, we cannot achieve it disregarding our past. It's impossible to advance if we do not understand where we have come from. Where we have come from does not necessarily mean wallowing in sadness and carrying on the trauma of our parents and our elders. It just means that we have to protect what it is we have achieved and not take it for granted, like you said.
What would be the ways? What ways would you want this to be done, or how do young people want to be able to take this up? I mean,
I think fundamentally the first thing that needs to be done is more research.
More research.
We need to understand what the genocide is, because growing up, ever since I can remember, the month of April is mourning and older people going to the stadium and just a very, very dark period. And for me, I never really had to understand it growing up. I never really had to understand what it is. I just knew in April, no music, no television, no necessarily all of that. And when you grow up with that, it kind of becomes boring. But when you really delve into the history and understand what happened is when the sense of responsibility starts coming up. So most importantly, it's researching, understanding our history, and then we can take responsibility, knowing exactly what it is that we want to achieve.
Right, that's important. And we'll come back to the initiatives that you've been doing and probably weighing on the result and how these initiatives can be supported to ensure that maximum results are seen. Ambassador Ron, you know, you're serving, you know, representing Israel in a country that maybe some of your peers might be telling you we envy you because of, you know, the level of growth, projections and what we've been able to see, 8%, for example, for the economic growth trajectory, we see Rwanda being positioned at high stakes and high places when it comes even to biodiversity and all that. What do you think is behind this? If you look from outside,
Yes.
What do you think is leading to this?
No, thank you. So, in order to understand the success of this country, as an historian, I want to bring you a bit back.
Yeah.
Of course, not much happened here, I would say, in the two first republics. The leaders were engaged in divisionism and in protectionism and in chasing the Tutsi and killing them. There was not much development. And then comes 94, where there was totally black, ending in ashes. The perpetrators just left with all the assets that Rwanda was left with the money. The joke said that they only didn't take the roads because they couldn't, but otherwise they took everything. So this country was drawn into a zero. So starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And of course we had it in our past, but it was 75 years ago. Now we celebrate 75. But what was the secret here? The secret was the period between 94 and 2001, when the leadership looked for how to formate this new country. And they did it through engagement with the communities, engagement with the population. What did they achieve with the engagement? A constitution, a flag, of course, a national anthem, but mainly a constitution, which was built on the secret of Rwanda. What is the secret of Rwanda? The use of the homegrown solutions.
Yeah.
Why is it a good secret? Why is it a success? Because when you take the homegrown solutions, which are the tools that were used by the kingdom,
Yeah.
and when there was a kingdom here, we already forget because of the divisionism of the colonialists that were here, they were fine. They did very well. The people lived with each other. Yeah, the tribes were good with each other. They were one. They were one people. And when you use homegrown solutions from the kingdom, everyone adhered to that because these solutions are accepted by everyone. So these solutions, such as gachacha, which was mentioned here, was used at the time because it was accepted by everyone. The Umushichirano, which is a national dialogue, which is an amazing tool of the president and his ministers to talk to people. Or the Umuherero, which is a process of performance reporting.
Yeah.
Every minister, every ambassador, and every mayor sign a contract for his performance. So these tools, like Umuganda, of course, and other these 9 or 10 tools that were used during the kingdom was brought through the constitution and through other laws to the life. And if we add to that the zero tolerance to corruption, if we add to that the nice climate, the smiles of the people, the patriotism of the people, and the safety, that is the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's
an organized place.
Yeah.
You cannot imagine when you think from outside. So these are the secrets that brought this place 29 years what we see.
Yeah, I heard Dr. Zonia wants to.
You know, why what Ron is saying is so significant is that for those of us in the international development community, there's an assumption that there's expertise coming from outside their country to come tell you what to do to develop your country.
Yeah.
And the truth is that every development model in any country is a result of the social, economic, and political conjectures of their own political history. So they develop their model. There is no pathway for development. Each country must define its pathway. And usually you define it in the context of your history, your social, your lived experience, your economy, and your politics.
Yeah.
And there may be elements that need transformation, transition to the modern time. They need reformation. But anchor it in those. And once you have the element of leadership and consensus seeking, your pathway will work for you. And I think that's the difference between Rwanda and many other countries. Many countries in Africa are waiting for someone from either an institution or a country to say this is how you do it, because this is how we did it in our country. And that's not an appropriate development model, because you don't have the same history as they do.
No same history. Let's also have in Paul join us on this one. Paul, especially on the aspect of those who are outside of Rwanda, especially on the aspect of the denial. The deniers are still out here. We even despite the efforts that have been put to bring information to the limelight, and also to bring to justice those who perpetrated the genocide against the Tutsis, there is still denialism happening. People just outrightly refusing to even call the genocide against the Tutsis what it is. What should be done? I mean, in a nutshell, and from where you sit at the ministry, what's the best way to deal with this, especially for those who are survivors who feel insulted by some of these kind of behaviors?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is to never give up.
Never give up.
Never give up to fight those deniers, because their expectation is that one day we'll be weak, and their strategies will make us weaker. But we should not fall into that trap, because we have the truth. The truth, the genocide happened in the broad daylight. So people have documented how the genocide happened. People now understand, even before the genocide, the killings, the genocidal killings, because you can understand the genocide without understanding what happened between 1962 and 1994.
Yeah.
As the ambassador mentioned, that the two republics focused on dividing people.
Yeah.
Not developing the country, just dividing the people.
That was the goal.
That was the goal. And developing and telling one part of the people that you are true Rwandans, le peuple rwandais, you are true Rwandans, and others, you're not. And to highlight what the ambassador said, in 1972, President Kayibanda published a book in which he said he was teaching people. So the aim was to teach the young ones the so-called social revolution of 1959. And on the third page of that book, it was in Kinyarwanda actually. Not so many people know about that book. In Kinyarwanda, it's Ebyingenzi mu mateka y'u Rwanda. So I can translate it, the basic elements, the important elements in the Rwandan history. On the third book, on the third page of that book, he said, Tutsis are not Rwandans. They are foreigners at the same level as the Belgians. On the third page of that book. So you understand, the presidency published a book, really legitimizing the non-Rwandanness of the Tutsi. So this government is building on unity, on accountability, and seeing far. So here I'm repeating the three choices that His Excellency said: accountability, unity, being together, unity, and seeing far.
I want to ask all of you. Either of you can pick this up, and it's the question of the never again aspect of moving it from just beyond slogan to actually actions. I've seen leaders, I've seen influential people walk in and out of the Genocide Memorial, at Gisozi. And months later, when you go back to their countries, you find there is still ethnic divisions or tribal-based politics for that matter. And we've been seeing and hearing about all these kind of things still happening. Even just right across in Eastern DRC, we have red flags that have been raised that there is a targeted community or group of people, the Tutsis who are in Eastern DRC, for extermination. And I want to start with you, Dr. Ozonia, on this, because we talked about the never again and the aspect of that. Has the world really learned from what happened here in Rwanda as far as the genocide against the Tutsis is concerned?
I wish I could say an unqualified yes, but I think it's a journey that the world is walking. And that journey is made more difficult by the complexity of interstate, but also intrastate relations. Intrastate, you have political groupings, political actors fighting for, engaging political contestation, and it's all about power. And regrettably, if you don't have robust institutions at that intrastate level that calls them out, that contestation very quickly degenerates to ethnicity, all forms of identities, and then they win power and they get away with it. And then you would hope that when they get power, they could reject all of those mechanisms that got them to ascend to power and become like statesmen. That doesn't happen because in the national level, the institutions of accountability and justice are weak. Now, at the intrastate level, you'd find that many member states have all kinds of aspirations, and those aspirations don't often cohere. And so, for us as a United Nations system, when you look at what is happening across the border, you're seeing signals that should get everybody worried. Now, the good news is that the member states in the region are seeing the same signals. But state government-to-government relationships are organized very differently. Very often not in the public domain. So my Rwandan friends are rightly enraged that they don't see member states or the international community calling out the behavior. That's correct. Now, but in reality, there are very deep-seated engagements at different levels with different political actors, and saying to them, you signed on to certain commitments. If you look at the Nairobi process, if you look at the Rwanda process, if you look at all the agreements made under the Great Lakes Strategy developed by the UN, the governments have committed to every single step. So why don't you keep to the commitments you have made? So our hope will be that these multiple platforms of engagement, that the weight and legitimacy of the member states in the region enable us to get to the destination we want. Even where our citizens are angry because they're not seeing those people called out. But you know that many mechanisms of the UN system have done investigations, have done reports that have highlighted all of this. And some of the UN top leaders are also speaking out. The special advisor on the prevention of genocide was very clear about what is happening. So we need that consensus with the international community.
Ron, as I go to read the comments on the wall, Ron, on the same question, do we have time? Do we have time to say there are processes? What is it that people didn't see that is enough to tell them enough of the bureaucracy, let's fix this problem?
Yes, so just about denial, one thing, denial exists also for the Holocaust. So what we need to do is to tell the story. The more you tell your story, the less denial. I mean, my parents' generation, by not speaking, allowed denial of the Holocaust, and it's of course against the law. But what I always remind the young people here, they have to really thank their leader, because there was a decision here not to retaliate. There was a decision here to start a new country with reconciliation process, with forgiveness, with, of course, courts, work, etc. But otherwise we would be here in a failed state. And nothing would be good. It would be chaos. So this, you have to add, the leadership here is unique, is Pan-African, is so accepted by countries, and this is part of the secret of success.
But then, Sharon, I mean, you might want to pick up on this as well, the aspect of never again. I mean, has it just been turned into a slogan when we can continually see, just the other time in 2007, back in Kenya, we had a very terrible situation. And later on in the next election, we still also had. The other time, we almost saw the same. In DRC, Eastern DRC, we've just mentioned the situation is going there. What is your thinking as a young, innovative person on this?
I personally couldn't really give you a concise answer because looking at the history of this, of so many genocides that have happened. He talked about the Holocaust, and not just genocide, also the Sierra Leone war that we were talking about with Dr. Ogiello.
Yeah.
And Yugoslavia and Armenia. We've always had these events that repeat themselves almost identically, almost in the same, how it's led up, it almost the same.
Yeah.
So it just becomes very difficult to really answer that question, because most of the time many regions are not able to track where it's going while it's just happening. So we can only hope.
Of course, that UN, I've been in the UN system also many years. UN has to engage more in preventive diplomacy, in trying to find the potential conflicts ahead of time. And of course, Ambassador Ozoni will say, yes, that's what we try to do, and that's so many initiatives of the Secretary Generals in all generations.
Yeah.
That is what we need to do, to spot,
Prevention.
to prevent conflicts, to build a technique, a mechanism, how you can, and you can, because there are teachings about it, to find out ahead of time what can draw, and then you need the power and the authority to prevent it. But then, of course, come paragraph 51 on the countries do not want anyone to engage their own problems internally. Yes, but never again is a challenge, and I think that we can do more.
Yeah, we can do more. I want to just read the feedback, because we promised that it's a show that is interactive, and we have people joining us from across the world under the hashtag this summit RW. I have Mugabe, who actually did remember to share with us the YouTube channel, but also there's Robert Mugabe, who's responding on what is making Rwanda work, and he says Rwanda's success can be attributed to visionary leadership, good governance, and a commitment to national unity and reconciliation. The country's focus on economic development, infrastructure investment, and social welfare programs have also contributed to our remarkable transformation. There you go. I have a good friend, Dolapo, who says, from a personal perspective, stepping on Rwandan soil for the first time in April 2014 during Kwibuka 20, the transformation has been astounding, targeted, focused, and deliberate, and is evolving. The transformation is crystal clear and glaring for all to see. Let me take another one right here from Sylvester, who says, a country that picked itself from pieces to an embodiment of peace, unity, stability, and growth. That is why you feel proud to be Rwandan. I have love is the way. He has actually posted his passport there, and he says that a true identity right there. Thank you very much for this feedback. As we close right now, just one word. The next 29 years, what do you see in just one word, Ambassador Ron?
So the place became a hub.
Ambassador, one word.
The next 29 years, we're closing.
Yes.
Well, I think that in one generation, just one generation, the next one after her, it will be a stable state that everyone will look for.
Right. I think one word is unfair. Let me give you one sentence. Thank you, Ambassador. How about you, Sharon? One sentence. The next 29 years.
Yes, I hope for more engagement and healing.
Yeah, more engagement, more healing. How about you, Doctor?
Reconciled and transformed society that is a beacon for the continent.
Right. I thought that is already what we're seeing.
29 years, at the higher level, much more strategic level.
Okay.
Yeah, this becomes a melting pot.
All right, melting pot. That I like.
And that's not easy for a Nigerian to say.
Medium income country. Medium income country.
Middle income country for the next 29 years.
Even less.
Even less.
Yes.
How about you, Paul?
My message to the youth:
Yes.
think critically and smarter and work harder.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in the next 29 years, they have to be critical thinkers, hard workers, and
think
visionary.
smarter.
And be smarter in terms of visionary. I like that. I'm told we need to start wrapping up. It's so unfair. The show usually starts getting actually sweeter as we start going. But of course, we want to say thank you so much to all of you for making time. It's very important that we have this conversation. Paul Rukesa, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Ozoni as well, thank you so much. And Sharon Baingana, thank you for being a part of the program. Ambassador Ron, Asante sana. Thank you for being a part of
Thank
this
you,
conversation. We hope to keep the conversation going. And to you, our viewer, this is your show. And of course, the conversation will continue going on. And of course, we don't end them on these four walls of this studio, this amazing studio. They have to continue. Let's keep talking. Let's show those who probably feel that nothing is happening back here in Rwanda. Let's show them even with some pictures. Tell them why you believe and why you're proud to be Rwandan. Actually, I'm proud to be Rwandan. We'll see you again next time. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye for now.